our invitation at very short notice and gives us an opportunity to being learned and motivated again. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, Professor P.T. Saxena, madam.
Thank you, Kamini. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Chaube, the chairperson of this grievance cell, the members of the committee, for organizing a webinar on such a topic which is always and which will remain always a need in the society like India. So far as the sexual harassment at workplace is concerned, it's a universal problem. It is a universal problem in the world, whether it be a developed nation or it's a developing nation. So we see that even underdeveloped nations, they're all, part of this sexual harassment at workplace, because atrocities and cruelties against women is common everywhere. It is seen that it is happening more with the women gender, as they are considered to be most vulnerable section of the society. And we see that this sexual harassment can be identified as a behavior. So far as the law on sexual harassment is concerned, we know that prior to 2013 Act, we were having the Indian Penal Code of 1860, which was having some of the provisions not directly related to the sexual harassment. Then the supreme law of the land, as Madam rightly told about, various fundamental rights have been conferred upon everyone. That includes the women also, that is under the Constitution of India. Then we had some of the judicial guidelines in Vishakha case, which is well known to, I think, everyone, that is related to a case of sexual harassment at workplace. And finally, in 2013, we have the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, which is meant for the prevention, prohibition, and redressal of that sexual harassment. So first of all, the supreme law of the land, that is the Indian Constitution, and we see that there is no direct provision relating to the sexual harassment in the Constitution of India. But the very preamble of the Constitution, which is starting from the 5 words, "We the people of India," that speaks about no discrimination. And that says that it is for securing to all the citizens. When it says all the citizens, it simply means citizens include men and women all. So what is to be secured for the citizens? That is justice, liberty, equality, and very importantly, to promote the fraternity, which has to assure the dignity. So dignity is the preambular objective under the Constitution of India, which has to be maintained, which has to be secured by everyone, and there should not be any discrimination as such. Then again, we see in part 3rd of the Constitution, which speaks about the fundamental rights. Then, of course, there is Article 14 of the Constitution, which confers a right to equality, that everyone should be equal before law and equal protection will be given to everyone. There is no discrimination as to one person is CM, PM, or President of India, and the other is a laborer or a daily wages worker or a teacher, whomsoever it may be. That means if one is a citizen of the country, will be treated equally. So this is the beauty of this Article 14, which provides for the right to equality. Then very well told by Professor Chaube, that is Article 15. Of course, it prohibits any discrimination on the ground of sex, besides other grounds like religion, race, caste, place of birth. So Article 15 is there, which prohibits the discrimination, as I'm talking about the women sexual harassment at workplace. So discrimination is one of the biggest thing which are being faced by the women, and this is prohibited under Article 15. Moreover, we see that Article 15 Clause 3 specifically put an obligation on the state to make these special provisions for women, besides children also. So under that Article 15 Clause 3, we see that the special provisions and special laws have also been enacted for the women. Then Article 19(1)(g), which is one of the fundamental freedom which is available to the citizens also. and that provides for right to practice any profession and carry on any occupation, trade or business, etc. And that simply means that if this has to be provided to the citizens under 191G, that means the workplace must be a safe workplace. And with that article 191G, which speaks about the occupation, trade and business as a fundamental freedom to every citizen, article 21, which is said to be one of the very important article, which is about right to life and personal liberty, that confers upon women, including men also, a right to safe environment, free from sexual harassment, and to live with life with full of dignity. So Article 21 is very important article under this chapter of fundamental rights. Then we see that not only the fundamental rights, being a citizen of the country, every citizen is having certain duties also. And these duties are known as the fundamental duties. And though we were not having these fundamental duties in the constitution initially when it was enforced in 1950, but by 42nd amendment we see that 10 duties have been incorporated under chapter 4A of the constitution, which is 51A article. And later on another one more duty has been inserted in 2002 by 86th amendment. So now we are having 11 duties, and one of the very important duty which is related to the women dignity, that is 51A subclause E, which says that, or which confers a fundamental duty on every citizen, which says that to renounce the practices derogatory against the women. So it is one of the fundamental duty, and you see that the government of India from the last 26th November 2019 is going through various programs on the fundamental duties and citizens' duties. So this is also one of the duty, and this can be related with this Mission Shakti program of the state of UP government. So this duty is very important. Instead of rights, the duty has to be followed, and that duty is that to renounce the practices which are derogatory against the women. So these are the provisions in the constitution. Basically, besides other reservation policies are also meant for which are not related directly to the sexual harassment, only that is that they should be treated, or they should be given a safe environment at the workplace. Then we were having the criminal law, and particularly Indian Penal Code. We see that this is as a natural consequence and a public movement after the Nirbhaya case. You all must be reminded of the Nirbhaya case of 2012, when a public movement was there, and the law has to be changed, the criminal law has to be changed, and we see that substantial changes were made in the way that is sexual harassment was viewed within the criminal justice system in 2013. So the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013 inserted section 354A, B, C, and D, besides other sections also. But these are related somehow to the sexual harassment and some of the offenses which were related to the women. So 354A, that is related to the sexual harassment, and that defines sexual harassment and also punishes for the same, that is 3 years imprisonment and fine. I'll be dealing what are the ingredients of that sexual harassment under 354A. Then 354B is equally important, which is relating to the forcing a woman to undress. And this is a crime, this is an offense for which 7 years imprisonment and fine is imposed under 354B. Then 354C section, that is also important, which makes a different type of the offense, that is voyeurism, which means that watching or capturing the image of a woman without her consent. So now everyone is having the smartphone with him or her, and it can be misused, we all know. So this watching or capturing the images, that has been made an offense, which is without the consent of the women, and 7 years imprisonment and fine is to be there. Then stalking is another offense under the criminal law, that is IPC, which speaks about that following or women, or contacting her without her consent, or trying to contact her despite she says that she doesn't want to contact her. So you may be reminded of one of the picture Pink, in which there was one dialogue that no means no. So this stalking is like that, that you are following a woman and contacting her or trying her to contact her despite she is saying that she doesn't want to be contacted, or monitoring a woman using the internet or some electronic communication. So this has been made an offense in the name of stalking. And stalking is an offense, and for which 3 years imprisonment and fine is there under Indian Penal Code. So these four sections have been inserted by Criminal Amendment Act of 2013. Then, as I told you, 354A is directly related to sexual harassment. So this is an offense in which we see that sexual harassment has been defined as to have some physical contact and advances involving unwelcome and explicit sexual overtures, or it is a demand or request of sexual favors, or it is like showing pornography against the will of the women. That is also sexual harassment, or making some sexually colored remarks as such. So these are said to be the offenses under sexual harassment 354A of the Indian Penal Code. And you see the nature of this offense is cognizable, and there is punishment for 3 years as well as the fine also. Then besides these Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, which has inserted these sections, earlier we were having, and presently also in the IPC, section 509. So this 509 provides for the that words or gestures or acts which are intended to insult the modesty of a woman. So this was related to the women modesty. So this was had to be a offense, that is uttering of any of the words or making some sound or gesture which is against the modesty, or exhibiting some of the objects. You know, every woman must be knowing that if she or he, if she is in the place, then the male persons, they usually show something or exhibits the objects. So that is also against the modesty, and which is an offense under section 509, for which 3 years imprisonment as well as fine is also there. Then 294, section 294 is also one of the offense under IPC, which speaks about the obscene acts and obscene songs, कि अश्लील गाने और अश्लील तरीके की बातें कर देना. So this is also one of the offense against the person concerned. So for that 3 months imprisonment and fine has been there. So we see that the law regarding sexual harassment is there in IPC and some of the provisions in the Constitution. Then pre-Vishakha scenario, you must be aware of the Vishakha judgment of 1996. But prior to that, you know that till 1996, there was no direct law which can be said to deal with these type of the judgments or this type of the situation. And I'm not going into the facts of the Vishakha case, which was a case relating to a social worker, Bhamri Devi. And she was raped in front of her husband by some of the village heads in that particular village in the Rajasthan. So the guidelines in this Vishakha case, which came as an outcome of the case, those guidelines were derived from the International Convention, that is CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So that was in existence since 1979 onwards, and the Supreme Court has taken the clue from this international convention to reach to give the directions and guidelines in Vishakha case, along with the provisions in the Constitution, particularly Article 14, 15, as I told you, it's a right to equality, and then Article 21, as it is a right to life and personal liberty, as well as Article 19(1)(g), because it is a case related to the sexual harassment at workplace. So that means that the woman who is allowed or who is going out of house for working. So we see that the Supreme Court has taken the help of these articles, fundamental rights 14, 15, 21 and 19(1)(g), which is a right to practice profession, trade and business, etc. So this has been interpreted by the Supreme Court that the employer has to provide a right to safe environment at the workplace, which is free from harassment. And there is a need for the guidelines at the same times, because there is a legislative vacuum. There was no law, as I told you. So the guidelines have been given by the Supreme Court in this Vishakha case, and certain preventive steps were also given by the Supreme Court. Criminal proceedings, the disciplinary action has to be taken, some complaint mechanism is to be there. And this was the case where for the first time this internal complaints committee have to be established by the employer, the workers initiative awareness program. So all these have been directions and guidelines of the Supreme Court in this case of Vishakha versus Rajasthan. And we see that India is a country which is governed by rule of law, separation of power is there. That means all the organs of the state has to function in their field. That is, judiciary has to interpret, legislature has to enact the law, and executive has to execute the law. But this is the case which is also known as the judicial legislation on sexual harassment, because there was some legislative vacuum, there was no law. And if any matter has been brought before the Supreme Court, then Supreme Court cannot say that there exists no law, so we cannot give you the remedy. So remedy has to be given, and this is how the Supreme Court has given the remedy, by giving the directions. And it also said that until the law is enacted regarding sexual harassment at workplace, these guidelines will be treated as law. So this is something which is very, very important for the purpose of saving or protecting the working women from the sexual harassment. Then we see after 1996, there were various attempts made for enacting the law on the sexual harassment, and finally the parliament, after a long gap, we see it was in 2013, so almost 17 years after the judgment in Vishakha, the parliament has passed the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, which is Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act. So this act speaks about preventing sexual harassment, prohibition of sexual harassment, as well as redressal for the women who have faced the sexual harassment at workplace. So this 2013 act is consisting of 8 chapters and 30 sections. And this is the act along with the others, which is to be extended to the whole of India. Now you see that prior to 5th August 2019, when this Jammu Kashmir and Article 370 has been abrogated, the laws which were enacted by the parliament, there was one of the provision regarding extension of that act, or for the application of that act, that the act will be applicable except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But this was an act of 2013 which was extended to the whole of India, so that the women who were there in Jammu and Kashmir, they were also to be tackled under this particular act, because the act has its extension to the whole of the country. Then you see that aggrieved women, who shall be the aggrieved women, this has been defined in section 2A of the particular act, which includes that in relation to the workplace, women of any age, whether employment or not, or who alleges to have been subjected to any of the sexual harassment by the respondent. So here you see that the act is applicable for the aggrieved women. It's not for the men, because sometimes we see that gender neutral acts are also there, but this is the name, the very name of the act is sexual harassment of women. So here the provision is regarding aggrieved women. Then section 4, which is very, very important, that is regarding the constitution of internal complaint committee. That is every institution which is having more than 10 employees, then there must be the constitution of this internal complaint committee. And you see that Vishakha case was applicable for the government or the public sectors. It was not applicable to the private sectors, which was later on criticized also. And that's why this act of 2013 included unorganized and private sectors also. So now when there is any sexual harassment of the working women, like domestic helps and otherwise also. So where they will go? Who is the employer? So in that case, this act provided for a local complaint committee under section 5. And that local complaint committee will be under the guidance of the district magistrate DM concerned of every district, and this has to be there. So now, so far as this internal complaint committee is concerned, the constitution of the committee you may be knowing, because you are all dealing with that committee. And besides the presiding officer, who must be a senior most, or a very senior woman in the particular workplace employed under the employer. So she should be the presiding officer of that committee. And if there is no senior women, then if there are more than one workplace of the employer, then from the other workplace she can be taken. If there is no women at any of the workplace, then can be taken from a different workplace. So this is the provision under this this Act of 2013 under section 4.2. You see that the senior most women should be the presiding officer. Then there will be 2 more members who are from the amongst the employees and who are committed for the cause of the women, or who have had the experience of working in the social work, or some have legal knowledge also. So they may also be the member of that committee. And 1 member that is from amongst the non-governmental organization, from some NGO or from some other association, who is committed for the cause of women. So this is the constitution of committee, that is presiding officer, the senior level women, then 2 members who may be having the legal knowledge or working in the social work, and 1 NGO member, that is 1 member who is independent from that employment. Now, because you see that it is a case for deciding the matters of the sexual harassment of working women at that workplace, and if all the members in that internal complaint committee will be from the same institution or institute, then naturally you see that there may be chances of bias. So in order to avoid that biasness, you see that 1 member of this committee would be from the out of this employer's institution, and she may be from some NGO, from some association who is working for the cause of the women. So that is, we see that this is the combination of the committee and constitution of the committee. And one thing which is very important is that at least 1/2 of the total members so nominated by the employer shall be women. That is 50% must be women, more than 50% must be women in the committee. Male should also be there in the committee. Then when the committee is constituted, you see at section 9 provides for the complaint of the sexual harassment. That is how to the internal complaint committee, the complaint has to be made by the aggrieved women. And then the first established the ICC, which this internal complaint committee has to take, is the conciliation. You see that all are workers and co-workers, so it should not be in a very revenge, or in a way that the working culture should remain there, or working power should be there. So in that way, you see that section 10 of the act provides for the conciliation. So first of all, if there is any complaint made by a woman against the co-worker in the same institution or employment, then the first attempt would be to concile the matter, to make a conciliation between the parties. And if conciliation is not there, then only the inquiry in the complaint has to be proceeded under section 11. So first conciliation after getting the complaint, and then if there is no conciliation, then inquiry into the complaint. So action during the pendency of the inquiry, some of the actions can be taken and suggested or recommended by the committee to the employer. So you see that section 12 provides for that when the inquiry is pending on the written request of the women who is an aggrieved woman to the internal complaint committee, then the committee can suggest or recommend to the employer that the aggrieved women is to be transferred if it is from the aggrieved women. If aggrieved women demands that she should be transferred from that place to some other place, then it can be recommended by the internal complaint committee. So the first thing which can be done is transfer the aggrieved women. Then second, to grant the leave to the aggrieved women for a period of 3 months, and grant of such other relief as the aggrieved women desires in that act. And one of the important point is that this 3-month leave will be in addition to any of the leaves which she is entitled for, so she can claim for this also. Then section 13 provides for the inquiry report. That is when the committee, internal complaint committee, inquires into the matter and finalize its report, then that report has to be given to the concerned parties. So both the parties are entitled for having the report of the internal complaint committee, and within a period of 10 days it has to be done after the completion of the inquiry. Then you see that when the report is submitted to the employer by the ICC, then within 60 days, that is in 2 months, the action has to be taken by the employer. Whatever report has been given by the internal complaint committee, then within 60 days, as per the provision of the Act, section 13, I think it is clause 4. So it has to be done by the employer. Then you see that this act is also being taken as a weapon in the hands of the working women who are aware of the rights and the provisions of this act. So this is for the very first time the act has provided also that if the complaint is found to be malicious complaint or false complaint, then a specific provision is there for punishment to the women also. So this is something very important in order to avoid the things, though it may be against sometime, because you see that the women who is knowing and in order to harass the co-worker can file a complaint. So the provision under section 14 is given that the punishment for false or malicious complaint or false evidence where the internal complaint committee finds that the case has been filed or the complaint is a wrong complaint. So this is a provision in the act which is very, very important. Then if the complaint is found to be correct one, then the committee will decide as to what shall be the compensation to be given to the women. So the criteria for deciding or determining the compensation, then you see the mental trauma, the pain, sufferings, or emotional distress which has been caused to the women, that has to be considered while determining the compensation. Then the loss in the career opportunity, because these type of the sexual harassments, many of the women they feel like that that there is some loss in their career, in their opportunity which she may have if there would not be any incident of the sexual harassment. Then this is also one of the pointer to determine the compensation. Then medical expenses incurred by the victim women, any physical or psychiatric treatment, because being traumatized mentally, there is pain and suffering, so there may be some medical expenses also. So that is also another pointer for determining the compensation. Then the income and the financial status of the respondent, that the person against whom the complaint is made. So the status, financial status is also very important in order to determine the compensation. And at the same time, the feasibility of paying the compensation, whether a lump sum compensation is to be paid or it has to be paid in some installment. So this is how in section 15, the determination of the compensation has to be made by the internal complaint committee while making its report to the employer. Then we see that secrecy is also one of the important factors, that whenever any complaint is brought before the internal complaint committee, then that investigation, inquiry, whatever is that has to be done secretly, and that has not to be published anywhere. So section 16 is important for that purpose, which prohibits the publication, because you see that the newspaper journalists, they are there, that if there is any complaint or the committee, then they will be reaching to the chairperson of the committee whether there is any complaint or not, so that it has to be published, so that may be highlighted like that. You see Rajan Gogoi, the Chief Justice of India, a complaint was there and that was all publicized in the newspaper. So there is a clear provision in the Act, Section 16, which prohibits that there shall not be any publication making known the contents of the complaint and the inquiry proceedings. And at the same time, you see there is a provision for penalty also for publication. If there is any publication, then there would be a penalty under Section 17 of the Act itself. So this is something which is very, very serious in nature, and in that anonymity of the women has to be maintained so that her name may not come out or publicized in any way. Then when this all is there, report has been sent by the committee to the employer, then you see that naturally there would be one party who is aggrieved. So whether a decision or report is in favor of the women, the other party, that is the respondent, would be aggrieved, or if the decision is not in favor of the aggrieved women, then she'll continue to be the aggrieved party. So for that, the law doesn't stop here. And you see Section 18 of the Act provides for the provision for appeal. So now you see that in this provision 18, it speaks about any person aggrieved, because initially I told you that this act is for the aggrieved women. But Section 18, because it is a provision relating to appeal against the report, and that's why it starts with any person. Any person means that a person who is respondent, of course, maybe a male person, then aggrieved from the recommendation of the committee, he or she can prefer an appeal before a court or before the tribunal, because it is dependent upon the service rules which are applicable to a particular institution. Because if it's a case of the university, if it's a case of some other institution, then it depends that what service rules are there. So on the basis of that can file an appeal before that. Then the Act provides for one of the important duties on the employers, that is under Section 19 of the Act. You see, as one of the program that you are holding the series of the program on this, and this is not that you have to take that, but this is one of the provision in the Act itself that these type of the programs are to be there. So you see that this is the duty of the employer for besides other things, that to provide the safe working place, working environment to the women who are coming at their workplace. Then to display at the conspicuous places at the workplace that the penal consequences of sexual harassment. So you have to put some of the posters also at various places that this is the committee, these are their numbers, you can contact on those numbers, and if you will be involved in any type of this sexual harassment, then naturally you will be punished for that. And these type of the information must be posted and placed at the conspicuous places, various places in the institution where the ICC is working. Then you see that to organize workshops and awareness programs as you are doing at regular interval, this is also one of the provision of Section 19 clause C. It speaks about that, to organize the workshops and the awareness programs at regular intervals for sensitizing the employees and regarding the provisions of this Act. Some orientation programs also are to be conducted for the members of the internal complaint committee, because you know that everyone is not aware of the legal provision as to how to proceed for the inquiry, how to investigate into the matter, what should be the basis for writing a report, how it has to be done. So everybody is not aware about that. So for that, not only for the others, but for the members of the committee, these orientation programs are also to be there. And this is the duty of the employer, that he or she should arrange for these type of the orientation programs for the committee members also. Then the duty is to provide necessary facilities to the internal complaint committee for dealing the complaint, for inquiry and all these things, so that the basic requirements which are there, the office, the steno and everything that is required, because the committee has to write the report and everything. So these are the things which are required, and this is the duty of the employer also to provide all these facilities to the internal complaint committee. and also to assist the securing the attendance of the respondent, because you know that this is a committee which is having the power of a civil court and can claim or can ask for any of the documents as the evidence before the committee. But at the same time, this is also the duty of the employer that if the complaint committee is asking for the presence of some the respondent or for some other thing or certain documents required for the proof of the case, then this is the duty of the employer to provide all these facilities, attendance and securing documents for the working of the internal committee, so that the internal committee could work properly. Then also to make available the information to the internal committee regarding that who has made the complaint, what type of the complaints are to be there, because sometimes the complaint may be directly to the employer. For example, in the university system, a person may give the complaint, the women may give the complaint to the vice chancellor directly, not being to the presiding officer or to the chairperson of the committee. Then that complaint has to be brought to the internal complaint committee. That is also the duty. And then to provide assistance to the women also, if she chooses that a complaint is to be made in relation to any of the offense which is there in the Indian Penal Code, then this is the duty of the committee as well as of the employer, that she should be helped for writing the FIR in the particular case also. So if a matter is coming as an offense under IPC, then the ICC is obliged under this act to help the women, to assist the women, so that she may have the FIR lodged under the particular section of the Indian Penal Code, particularly 509 you see. Then you see that there are certain other measures also which are to be taken by the employer concerned. They have to monitor the timely submission of the report by the internal complaint committee, or anything which is being done by the internal complaint committee to have the supervision also. This is the duty of the employer. Then section 21 provides for the submission of the annual report of the committee. Because being in the university system, I think you must be aware, because you have taken over just now very recently. So every year the UGC they sends one of the performa on which the annual return or annual report has to be sent, that how many complaints you have received in the ICC, what was the time period for deciding that complaint, what was the decision in that complaint. So that you have to give, and this is the provision in the act itself, and this is the duty of the employer under section 21 to submit all these reports to the authority concerned. And at the same time, I don't know, because when I was there was no annual report publication of the state university, but in Central University we have the annual report publication also, which is placed before the parliament, in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both. So in that annual report also, this has to be published, that how many complaints have been received, what was the result, how it has been decided, what was the time period within which it has been decided. So this has to be given all there. Then you see that the penalty for non-compliance of the provisions of the act, that is section 26, because the duties have been there under section 19. At the same time, if these duties are not being complied, or if these duties have not been observed and followed by the employer, then whether it is only for the purpose of writing in the act, no. There is a provision for the penalty of non-compliance of the provisions of this act under section 26, which says that if the employer fails to constitute an internal complaint committee, because I am aware that in your institution, this is the grievance redressal committee, which is not under the act. It should be internal complaint committee as provided under section 4 of the act. So you may take an initiative in that regard and ask for the constitution of the internal complaint committee as per the act of 2013. So because there is a provision that if the internal complaint committee is not constituted under the act, or the action is not taken under section 13, 14 and 22, as I told you, 13 related to the inquiry report, and 14 relating to the punishment in false complaints, or 22 in cases of the annual report, then or the employer contravenes or attempts to contravene or abates the other provisions of the act and the rules which are made, then he shall be punishable with a fine which may extend to 50,000 rupees. That is, if the employer fails to follow the provisions, then 50,000 rupees fine is to be there under sections 26 of the act. And at the same time, this is for the first time that the 50,000 fine has to be imposed on the employer. But subsequently, if he commits the similar offense or the same offenses, then the punishment would be double. So this is very important for the purpose of knowing that this has to be taken care with. And this is the university, but in some other institutions, when the licenses are required, so for that the cancellation of license, withdrawal or non-renewal of the licensor are also be part of the penalty which can be imposed on the employer. And then section 27, which speaks about the cognizance in these type of the offenses by the courts. So you see that every offense under this act shall be non-cognizable, and you see that the act is in derogation of the other law. So these are the provisions which are important for the purpose of understanding as to what are there in the 2013 act. But now for specifically, I'll be giving you the gist as to who shall be the aggrieved women. So everybody must know section 2A of the act, which speaks about the aggrieved women. That is, all the women who are visiting or working the workplace, the regular employee, the temporary employee, the ad hoc employee, the daily wages, or engaged directly or indirectly with the contractor. We all know that various construction type sites are also there. So the women are working there. So every daily wages engaged directly or indirectly with the contractor, working for remuneration or voluntary working or otherwise also if they are working. And the terms of the employment may be expressed, may be implied. They may be co-worker, they may be contract worker, they may be probationer, they may be trainee, apprentice, visitor, research scholar. So whatever is there, they all will be coming under this section 2A, which speaks about the aggrieved women, and that also includes the working in the dwelling places at the homes and houses, you see. And employee, who shall be the employee, as I told you that this is the category of the employee for the purpose of aggrieved women. Then who shall be the employer? When Vishakha decided, only government sectors were the employer, but after this act, you see that the management may be the employer, the supervision, who is having the supervision, the research guides are also under doing some supervision, they are also coming as the employer for the research scholar, and who is having certain control over the women. So the persons who are discharging the contractual obligations, or the persons, boards, committees, they are responsible for the formulation of policies, they all will be the employer in that sense. Then regarding workplace, so this has been defined in section 2O of the act. So workplace is also extended, like government owned and controlled workplaces may be there, hospitals, nursing homes, private sector organizations, sports institutes, stadium, training, dwelling places, various types of the workplaces are there. And any place visited by the employee arising out of the course of employment, that if she is in the transportation or provided by the employer, then again it would be considered as the workplace. So this is very important for the purpose of understanding that what shall be the workplace. And section 2N, that is what is sexual harassment. As I told you, that simply we see that demand or the request for sexual favor, this would be sexual harassment. Making sexually colored remarks, that would be sexual harassment. Showing pornography will be a sexual harassment. Physical contact and advances would be sexual harassment, or any unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of the sexual nature, that all will be considered as the sexual harassment. And then you see that any of the implied or explicit promise a preferential treatment in the employment. A woman who is working and the employer says that I'll give you the preference in the promotion or something like that, or some extra increment, you do this for me. So this is also covered under the sexual harassment, which is explicit or which may be implied promise. And this similarly, not only the promise but the threat also, that it would be detrimental for the employment. If you'll not do this, then I'll see you, like these type of the things. This is also coming under the sexual harassment. Then threat about the present or future employment status, I'll demote you, I'll not promote you. These are the things which are always there. Then interference with the work or creating some hostile environment, that if the employer directly is not doing, but it is doing through some other agent or some other persons, then it also covers the humiliating treatment, which is likely to affect the health and safety of the women. So this would be the sexual harassment, which is to be considered there in the Act, Section 3. Then, as I told you, internal complaint committee, and madam, you asked the vice chancellor for making or constituting a proper internal complaint committee, and at least 50% of the members of this ICC must be women, and one person from the NGO, from the persons who is independent, who is not in the service of that employer. So these are the requirements of the internal complaint committee that has to be there. And then we see that the complaint and the inquiry, all this is time bound. So this grievance redressal process, you see that when there is any incident of the sexual harassment, then 3 months have been given to the women, that within 3 months from the date of the sexual harassment she reports, then she must complain to the internal complaint committee. Besides 3 months, it's not possible for the internal complaint committee, then it is open for the employer either to allow or not to allow. But for the purpose of the Act, 3 months period is there. That is, the complaint can be made to the internal complaint committee, and then you see the employer request for the settlement, as I told you, the conciliation. So if that conciliation is not reached, then inquiry starts, and then when the inquiry is there, then within 3 months period, that inquiry has to be completed. So when the complaint is received, settlement has been asked for, settlement is not made, conciliation is not there, then from that date, 3 months period is there in the hands of the ICC, that the final report has to be made within that period of 3 months. If it is not made within 3 months, then the reasons for delay has to be recorded in writing. This is the provision in the Act. So we see that while making this inquiry, the provisions of natural justice must be followed. That means that there should not be any biasness, or the other party must be heard properly. That if a complaint has been made by the women, and being the senior most women as the chairperson of the committee will say that yes, women is the correct. So this is not so. The other party, that is respondent, must also be heard about what he wants to say against this complaint. So natural justice principles are to be followed. Then inquiry report has to be submitted to the employer, and after submission within 60 days, the action has to be taken by the employer. This is also in the provision. And then punishment will be given as per the rules of the particular institution. And if there is any grievance, then the person can go in the appeal also. So in gist, we can say that these type of the laws which we are having under the 2013 Act are very important. And you see, for the purpose of the university system, the UGC has also brought certain guidelines, and you find this in the website of the UGC also, in the name of caution. There is a complete booklet on this sexual harassment as to what procedure has to be followed by the committee in university system. So those guidelines are very important for the committee members, for the committees who are not aware about as to how to proceed in the matter after getting the complaint. And this is how we can see that provisions are there. Women are in the safe hand if there is ICC and it is working properly. So with that words, I would like to once again thank to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to share my views on this very important topic, which is related to all the women who are working, and not only in the public sector, but in the private sector, unorganized sectors also. And this is one thing which is to ensure the dignity of the women. So we have to ensure the dignity of women wherever we are. And for that, thank you very much. So I'll be happy if you'll be asking something which you all of you have not